Suicidal thoughts or actions, close to 30%. Feelings of isolation, meaning that they did not have anybody in their environment they could share their concerns with about their sexuality or other issues, almost 60%. Alcohol abuse, 13%. Club drug use, 15%, and almost 20% had a history of selling sex. Here are the interconnections in this diagram, the associations between the different factors, and we need to have them, otherwise there cannot be any syndemic production, no syndemic energy. Here the results: unprotected sex at baseline, 57% reported having had unprotected sex in the past 4 months at the start of the study, and the HIV prevalence, the percentage infected at baseline, was 22.5%. And under here you can see the factors that are descriptively associated with these findings: suicidal thought, alcohol consumption, selling sex, etc., related to unprotected sex. Club drugs, selling sex, history of forced sex are significantly related to HIV prevalence. Now, this is an essential graph, and I hope I can get it across and that you remember it. On the left side here we see the HIV prevalence in the yellow bars. On the bottom we see the number of conditions, or the syndemic count, the number of psychosocial health conditions, or the number of ongoing epidemic, co-epidemics. And on the right side it's the percentage of unprotected sex. Now, what do I want you to take home from this is that if there are 0 conditions, you are exposed to 0 conditions, your prevalence in your group is 19%. The more conditions you are exposed to, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, the higher the prevalence is. So the more psychosocial health conditions that you have in your group and you are exposed to, the higher your HIV prevalence, and it goes up from 19 to close to 40%. So the prevalence doubles, basically doubles, goes around and doubles by the increase in the number of psychosocial health conditions. And so here in the red line you can see the percentage of people reporting unprotected sex on this axis here. Also, and it should be, as the number of conditions goes up, the prevalence or the percentage of people reporting no condom use also goes up. So the more conditions, the more no condom use there is in your group, and the more HIV infection. Now, these are all descriptive associations. These are not causal associations. This is kind of ecological data, but it gives you quite an impressive account of the increase of HIV prevalence by the increase of the number of co-epidemics, which of course is driven by unprotected sex. Here at the right side you can see there is few people left. Few people have 4 or 5 conditions, and what you see here also is the impact of the mortality, because people with many conditions, they have a high HIV prevalence already in the beginning, so they'll drop out of the population quickly because of their high HIV prevalence. So here you see what I call data are subject to mortality bias. So those who have already passed away, they impact these data in the sense that they are no longer there. That taken in account, that's prevalent data. So here we go to the HIV incidence, and this is scientifically, this is very important and strong data, because in science we always want to predict and we want to look forward. So the HIV incidence here, you can see for some reason the color schemes seem to converge here, yellow and yellow. Important here is the blue line for you is that the people with 4 to 5 conditions, if they are not yet infected at baseline, they will become infected much quicker than the other groups with 1 to 3 or no conditions. And this is a Kaplan-Meier curve. So every time this curve goes down, somebody becomes infected. It's the probability of surviving. So you can see here at the end of the study, after 1400 days, is about 3 years. There is about 35% of those with 4 or 5 conditions have become infected, which is much higher than, for instance, if you have 1 to 3, where you can see it's about 20%. And if you have no conditions, your chances of becoming infected or your chances of not surviving is about 85 or 87%. So also that these curves do not cross, but they are widely separated, means that they're really separate effects. So if you have 1 if you have 0, 1 to 3, 4 to 5, etc. conditions, it impacts your probability of becoming infected over time, and that's prospective. So scientifically, that's a very valuable indicator of the effect of these syndemic conditions. Now, I'm going to end here with a number of limitations, of course. This cohort study was designed to implement biomedical interventions, to implement studies of behavioral interventions, which we are also doing at the Asylum Clinic currently. It was not designed to study syndemics, but since it offered an opportunity to do this type of work, we decided to do it anyway, and these are the results. And these are also the first results of syndemic effects outside of the United States, so that's assuring and convincing. Also is the first study that actually shows a predictive effect of the number of syndemic conditions that people are exposed to and the likelihood of becoming infected over time. So it really adds to the scientific strength of the syndemic concept and the value of it in understanding and trying to lay it out for us for use in prevention. So that's very, very good and assuring data. It's not very good that people get infected, but these are the data we have. The method of counting conditions does not account for the possibility that these conditions differ in magnitude. Depression may have a bigger impact than isolation, or drug use may have a bigger impact than alcoholism, etc. So we do not account for those. We do not account also for their synergy. When you put HIV and TB together, you probably get a lot more syndemic energy than when you put together, let's say, drug use and isolation. But both are syndemic productions. So the amount of syndemic energy when you put factors together is different. It does not account for that. In conclusion, in this cohort, we have multiple epidemics of mental health conditions in this group of MSM in Bangkok. And each of these epidemics is a mental health threat that deserves our attention and needs to be addressed. But in their complex interaction that is sometimes or maybe always very difficult to understand for the human brain, how they interact and feedback and come back, etc., etc., they are driving and accelerating HIV risk and HIV infection in this population in Bangkok and probably elsewhere in Asia and the rest of the world. Now, if we start to address these, and you start to address one, you may see impact in one, but if you do not address the others simultaneously, the effect in one is very quickly going to be absorbed by the lack of effect in the others. So we must try, and that's not an easy task, and I do not know the solution, we must try to address these epidemics together. We must try to address these epidemics in tandem if we want to make a difference. So what is out there for us to do and think is that we need to come together and think about more holistic, inclusive approaches in HIV prevention in which we include multiple social issues, multiple epidemics, multiple mental health problems in our prevention if we want to make a real difference in preventing HIV infection. And finally, the disclaimer. Stu, that's the end of the story. These views are mine, of course, and they not necessarily represent the views of the United States government. Thank you.